Do you mind guiding them right now around the world and just either with some tools or whatever? No, you've got to pay extra for that, lad.
Well,
I've got a meditation coupon right here. No,
and
I'm kidding.
if it was that, if it was that kind of momentary, I wouldn't have needed to write the book. But and a couple of people who've been chatting with me about the book, like we are chatting today about it, interviewers, have asked me about an acronym that I offer the reader at the end of the book. And they've said, can you lead us through the acronym? And it's basically the question that you've just asked, even though you haven't referred to that acronym. And I'll touch on it in a moment, but here's the most important thing I need to say about that. I do offer some very simple and powerful tools and the experience of actually reading through the book. And it's not a long book, it's only 100 odd pages. So, but at the end of the book, I offer people a little piece of scaffolding, a little tool, a number of them actually, but the main one is just a simple acronym which serves as a way of that they can remind themselves in any particular moment. They can remind themselves of what they've discovered as they worked through the book. I was going to say read through the book, but I want to again emphasize it's not just a case of reading about the concepts in the book, but as they go through the book, they'll be discovering all sorts of things about their emotions, their thoughts, and their perceptions, and their experience of presence and awareness of what's going on at any particular time. So at the end of the book, I offer this little acronym to quickly bring them back into a remembrance of what they've realized as they worked through the book. So for me to talk about that acronym now doesn't have the same effect because it's not serving now as a reminder of what they've worked through in reading that book. It would only serve as a conceptual suggestion of certain things, which can't have the same impact as having experienced what they will experience as they read through the book. But I will touch on a few things. The first thing I'll offer your listeners, just to give them a taste of this, what for many of your listeners may be a new kind of an idea or experience or sensing, that they are actually not their thoughts, but they're the observing awareness that's behind, for most of our lives, is very much behind the scenes of our experience of our life. But here's something that your listeners can do right now. If they think back to when they were a little child, 5 or 8 or 10 years old, did they feel like they were them? And most people, are going to nod their heads and say, well, yeah, I did. I felt like I was me. Of course I did. What about in your mid-teens? Did you feel like you were you? Yeah, I was me. Of course. When you were 20, when you were 30, when you were 40, did you feel like you were you? Yeah, of course. I've always felt like I was me. But then if people ask themselves, well, has your body changed over those years from when you were 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40? Well, yeah, sure. In big ways, it's changed. And what about the things that you think about life and some of your beliefs about who you are and about the world around you, about people? Have any of those beliefs changed? Well, yeah, a lot of them have changed. And some people I speak to say, well, some of mine have done a complete 180. Well, so we can't be then our body, because our body's changed, and we always felt like we were who we are. And we can't be the things that we believe about ourselves or about the world, because everybody's going to see that some of their beliefs and maybe all of their beliefs have changed from time to time. And if people see that their roles have changed at different stages in their life, one time they were a grade school student, later they were a high school student, maybe they went to college, or they didn't go to college, they went to work. And I had this job for 5 years, such and such a job, and then I changed jobs out of choice, or I had to, or I lost my job, and I started doing something else for another 10 years, and then I went into business for myself. So none of those roles that we've had through our life can mean anything about who we actually are, because I've always been me, even though I've had lots of different roles in my life. So the things that we tend to think of as who we are not at all who we are. This sense that you've always had since you were a child and all through your life, that I'm me having this experience, and I've always been me at different stages in my life. That sense of me is who you truly are. That's this formless awareness that's always been there, the observer or the witness of what you've been experiencing throughout your life. So any thought that you've ever had, any concept you've ever had, any definition you've ever had about who you are has nothing to do with who you are. You're the person, you're the awareness, not the person. So let's just, a more clear word would be you're the awareness that's noticed that thought that I'm such and such a kind of person, or I'm this job. I'm an important person because I'm a doctor, or I'm not an important person because I'm not a doctor, or I'm a bad person. All these judgments of ourselves. And they come and go, and none of them can be true, because any particular negative judgment that we've ever had about ourselves, we can also look at times when we felt the opposite, or were told by somebody the opposite, or thought to ourselves, I'm the opposite. So 3 weeks ago, I had this feeling that I was a bad person, and yet right now or yesterday, I really felt like, I did such and such, or I said such and such, and I feel like a good person. So bad person can't be who you are, because then you had an experience that you felt like you're a good person and somebody else said you were a good person. But good person can't be also who you are, because there's been times when you felt you were a bad person. So all of these mind games that the conditioned judging mind plays are nothing whatever to do with truth, reality, or who we are. So I'm hoping that your listeners are right now getting this sense, wow, I can at least have a general sense and understanding that, there's been this constant that I'm the person, I'm the awareness that has kind of witnessed or observed my life. So some of the key things that I lead people to experience throughout the book are, if what's getting in our way of feeling this or being this presence, feeling the peace and contentedness of our true nature, if what's getting in the way almost all the time for most of humanity is thoughts that are popping up that we're identifying with. We think they're true, and we think that they're who we are, whether they're thoughts about who we are, or they're thoughts about another person, or they're thoughts about the world or what's going on. If we identify with those thoughts, it's as though we're distracted from this formless awareness that is our true nature into identifying with the content of our thoughts, sometimes the content of our emotions, which are very much, of course, interwoven, or we're very much, as it were, one with our experience. We're not noticing ourselves as an awareness which is having a particular experience or having particular perceptions. We're generally those perceptions, where it's kind of what it's what is. But actually, as you begin to notice your thoughts and question them, notice your emotions without trying to hide from them or distract yourself from them or suppress them, or only focus on the good ones and try to push away the bad ones. None of these strategies work. As we begin to notice that we're the awareness that's noticing these thoughts popping up, we're the awareness that's noticing this emotion that's popped up, we're the awareness that's noticing what I'm perceiving, that I'm noticing that chair over there, or I'm noticing my cat over there stretching in the sunshine. I'm the awareness noticing these things that are going on. Then what comes to the fore, kind of bubbles up within our consciousness, is this lovely sense of presence, this reality of who we are. So there's an acronym that I mentioned toward the end of the book that helps people to be reminded about these things, about noticing your thoughts and noticing that you can't know for certain that they're true. When you notice then your present experience, you can feel at peace with it, because anything that you've been annoyed about, and most of us are kind of most of the time working on fixing something that we feel is wrong with our present experience. So most of the time, when people are in a particular moment having a particular experience, we're kind of feeling like we want to get away from that and fix it, make it, improve it, or achieve something different so that my experience becomes something better than what it is right now. We feel that our present experience, even if it's a very subtle kind of a background thought, there's this assumption that I want something better than what I'm experiencing right now. But when we notice that the only thing that's making us feel like our present experience is insufficient or should be something better or different, the only thing is a thought that we're believing. If we question the thought and then just notice where I am and what's going on, without believing a thought that something is bad, which only exists in imagination, if we look at the reality of our present moment experience, we can see that there is no good or bad. There's just what is. So another thing that people can do is and it takes a bit more explaining, but when we question our thoughts and we question and allow to dissolve these emotions, we come back to a kind of a sensing of a very peaceful, subtle energy in and around the body. So this is such a subtle thing that it's not really, as we were saying before, it's not really me experiencing such and such. It's more of a sense of, here's my beingness. I'm present here with this very fine, subtle, pleasant energy. So when it helps to be a little bit of an anchor also to coming back into who we truly are. And then as we do that and we look around at the world around us, what we're reading or what we're hearing on the news, or or somebody that's with us that we're having an interaction with, or we're just sitting and we're observing or listening to something, any of this we can notice without the distortions that usually operate out of our conditioned patterns of operation. So we can see things more as they are in reality without our agendas and our prejudices and our hopes and fears kind of interfering and distorting our perception. We're better able to see what's real.
Wow, the way you said that, I'm just in awe of your ability to communicate these concepts. And you obviously are a natural teacher.